Number 8. Alina Austin. In June of 2024, the owner of a pair of boutiques in Palm Beach, Florida, was arrested for peddling roughly $2 million worth of counterfeit merchandise. Local law enforcement shut down 2 Blesk jewelry locations which were operated by 51-year-old Alina Austin. The stores ensured customers that they were purchasing top-shelf designer items from brands such as Rolex, Tiffany, Versace, Pucci, and Chanel. Palm Beach police was tipped off to the selling of fake goods at the locations by the FBI. Through its organized crime, vice, and narcotics unit, the police launched Operation Worthless in October of 2023. In the months that followed, undercover detectives bought various items from Blesk stores, including what appeared to be Chanel earrings, a multicolored Pucci shirt, and a 4-clover Van Cleef and Arpels bracelet. All the items were looked at by brand representatives and confirmed as fakes. Austin was taken into custody at one of the stores on June the 7th of 2024 and charged with selling counterfeit goods before she was released on a $50,000 bond. Number 7. Letia Nicola Gomez. In late June of 2024, Brazilian woman Letia Nicola Gomez was arrested alongside her boyfriend Pedro Goncalves at the home they shared in Caraguatatuba. The duo was working with a gang led by Gomez's ex-boyfriend, Michael Rodriguez. 27-year-old Gomez had roughly 20 social media accounts and also set up multiple profiles on dating apps and sites. She used them to lure men who were then robbed by her former and her current boyfriend. The victims were threatened with violence and pressured into wiring money from their bank accounts via Pix, a Brazilian government-operated instant payment system. Gomez and Goncalves used the ill-gotten gains to dine, party, and vacation in exotic destinations like Cancun and Dubai. The couple were first arrested in March of 2023 alongside Rodriguez and 3 other suspects, including a teenager. Gomez and Goncalves were placed on house arrest, but they continued targeting victims leading up to the June raid of their home. Theirs was not an isolated case. Sao Paulo police records indicated that from January of 2021 to January of 2024, at least 52 women were used by gangs to bait 168 men via dating apps in Sao Paulo and nearby cities. Number 6. Caitlyn Braun. Between June of 2022 and February of 2023, Canadian woman Caitlyn Braun falsely solicited support related to pregnancy and childbirth from unsuspecting victims in the Ontario area. 25-year-old Braun targeted doulas, trained professionals who help clients before, during, and shortly after childbirth. While certified by some organizations, doulas aren't typical healthcare employees and as such don't have access to medical equipment or records and aren't registered with governing bodies. It thus made them easier targets for Braun's deception. She faked pregnancies and sought the services of an estimated 50 doulas. The workers reported that the woman's actions caused them to waste valuable time and suffer severe trauma, while some reported they weren't even financially compensated. As part of her twisted scam, Braun coerced victims into giving her massages while she was naked with the purpose of demeaning them. Following her arrest, the woman lied to the police while under oath and falsely accused one of the doulas of abusing her. In late 2023, Braun pleaded guilty to 21 of her 52 charges, including fraud, indecent acts, false pretenses, and mischief. She was sentenced to 2 years of house arrest and 3 years of probation. Braun was ordered to wear a GPS ankle monitor, have no contact with the victims, undergo counseling, and stay off the internet and social media. Experts believed that her behavior stemmed from a combination of mental health problems, namely major depressive disorder, generalized anxiety disorder, and bipolar and borderline tendencies. Number 5. John McKenzie. Political advisor John McKenzie rose to prominence as an aide and body man to President Donald Trump. He was hired shortly after the 2016 election and was eventually named director of the White House Presidential Personnel Office. In that capacity, he was reportedly responsible for overseeing the hiring and firing of executive branch employees and to make sure they were loyal to Trump's political vision. He was reported to have overseen the hiring of some staffers who were comically inexperienced out of self-serving motivations. A senior official said that McKenzie chose the most beautiful 21-year-old girls you could find. and guys who would be absolutely no threat to Johnny in going after those girls. One example in that regard was Instagram influencer Cameron Kinsey, who was 20 years old and still in college when McKenzie gave her the title of External Relations Director, according to a book by ABC News chief Washington correspondent Jonathan Karl. McKenzie tried to engineer a withdrawal of US troops from Afghanistan during Trump's final days at the White House. He allegedly did so in an attempt to fulfill the president's campaign promises before the end of his term. McKenzie drafted a document ordering the retreat and sent it out, causing considerable confusion among top-ranking officials. Vice President Mike Pence's national security advisor, Keith Kellogg, took a look at it and concluded it didn't look right. Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff General Mark Milley replied, "You're telling me that thing is forged? That's a forged piece of paper directing a military operation by the President of the United States." Trump was asked about the document directly and admitted to signing it, but the key people involved in the situation would point to the initiative as coming entirely from McKenzie. Trump reportedly abandoned the Afghanistan retreat upon being confronted with the order's complexity, both in its execution on the ground and in getting it through the typical White House channels. With his White House days behind him, McKenzie co-founded a dating app called The Right Stuff, directed at US Republicans and conservatives. He also gained popularity on TikTok and Instagram. In May of 2024, McKenzie caused outrage through a viral TikTok clip in which he claimed that he regularly gave homeless people fake $5 bills. McKenzie said when they go to use it, they get arrested, so I'm actually helping to clean up the community and get them off the street. While many users condemned McKenzie's actions as outrageous and illegal, he maintained that he was only joking. Number 4. Soma Thomas. An 18-year-old woman from North Liberty, Iowa, went to extreme lengths to get out of a date in the summer of 2024. On the 16th of June, Soma Thomas called 911 to report that her abusive ex-boyfriend had shown up on her doorstep after threatening to hurt her via text. The teen told law enforcement that she knew her abuser for 2 years and that she was pregnant with his child. Responding officers encountered the unnamed man as he was walking away from the residence. The police questioned him and he said that he'd met Thomas a week prior on a dating app before they'd arranged to meet in person. He showed officers the messages they'd exchanged, which confirmed his version of events, and he was let go. After repeated questioning, Thomas admitted that she'd panicked and concocted the entire story because she'd gotten cold feet and didn't want to go through with her date. The teen was consequently charged with 2 misdemeanor counts of false reporting. Number 3. Alexander. A British national only identified as 21-year-old Alexander was arrested in Thailand on May the 9th of 2024 for review bombing a restaurant. While living in Phuket in 2022, Alexander went through the unnamed restaurant because it was a convenient shortcut to his accommodation. The owner eventually barred him from doing so because he wasn't a paying customer. To retaliate, Alexander allegedly got his friends to help flood the restaurant with fake negative reviews, plunging its rating from 4.8 to 3.1 out of 5 stars. The owner filed a complaint with the Saku police station claiming the British man's actions had caused considerable damage to the establishment's finances and reputation. In August of 2023, an arrest warrant was issued for Alexander, who was charged with entering false computer data likely to cause damage to the general public. The Central Investigation Bureau tracked him down to his new apartment in Bangkok and took him into custody in May of 2024. Today's topic was requested by Tamika Davis, 6641, and Nadia Bacon, 6823. If you have any other topics you'd like to learn about, subscribe and let us know in the comment section below. Number 2. Khloe Stein. Pennsylvania woman Khloe Stein was last seen leaving work on the evening of May the 1st of 2023, and shortly before midnight, she sent a message to her boyfriend in which she claimed to have been pulled over by the police. The boyfriend and 2 friends subsequently found Stein's Volkswagen Beetle with her cell phone inside on Raid Bar Road under Route 66 in Greensburg. They subsequently called the police and reported her missing. The authorities launched a search which cost tens of thousands of dollars, lasted several hours, and involved a helicopter and canine units. On May the 2nd, Stein showed up to a neighbor's home and appeared to be distraught. The 23-year-old told the police that a masked man had held her at gunpoint and bound her before releasing her near home. State Trooper Steve Limani later remarked, sarcastically. Of course, because that's what someone would do. When pressed further, Stein broke down and admitted that she'd made the whole thing up. She'd abandoned her vehicle, walked several miles to her home, and hid in a garage behind the house while the police were out searching for her. It would emerge that the young woman's loved ones had been looking forward to her graduating from Penn State, Greater Allegheny, but a university official revealed that she hadn't been in school for more than a year and a half. Stein had faked her own kidnapping to cover up the fact that she dropped out. She was charged with false alarm to an agency of public safety, false reports, obstruction of administration of law and other governmental functions, and disorderly conduct. Coming up right after number 1, we have some insane cases prepared for you. Stick around for when narcissists go wrong. Number 1. Gold swap hustler. Between April and June of 2024, a gold swap hustler was captured on CCTV, tricking jewelers into buying fake gold at 2 locations in England. On April the 11th, the man targeted Ashley Adams Jewelers in Hailsham, East Sussex. He walked inside with 2 bags, one containing 2 18-karat gold Firo head pendants and another holding 2 lumps of brass that replicated the aforementioned items. The man, who spoke in an accent that was possibly Eastern European or Middle Eastern, offered to sell the gold. He then handed the worker behind the counter a bag with the genuine pendants, and after verifying their authenticity, she agreed to buy them. When she gave the bag back to him, the con man made the switch using sleight of hand. While maintaining eye contact and talking to the woman, he took the bag containing the gold pendants with his right hand and covered it with his cell phone. He then handed her a bag with the fake ones with his left hand. He was paid $1,100 and walked away. Realizing she'd been scammed, the worker, who chose to remain anonymous, called the police and later told a media outlet, "I hate looking back at the footage as it's so obvious what happens and how he does it." On June the 20th, the man struck again, 230 miles away at Church Street Gold Pottery and Furniture in Stoke-on-Trent. He was joined by a woman and they were smartly dressed with matching white jackets and black shirts. The con man claimed that he wanted to sell a bag of 9-karat gold, which 58-year-old Paul Woods examined and confirmed was genuine. As part of the distraction, the con man kept talking to his accomplice and eventually managed to swap out the real bag for a fake one with Woods standing right in front of him. The pair walked away with over £1,700. Woods, who'd owned the shop for 18 years later, said, "I watched him and somehow he managed to pull the wool over my eyes. I don't know how he has done it. It was quite a professional job." Neither of the suspects was identified and no arrests were reported as of the latest updates on the matter. Number 8. Rett Carty Shaw and Koro Mori Akiro. When 17-year-old Koro Mori Akiro discovered that her on-again, off-again boyfriend, Rett Carty Shaw, also 17, was still seeing his ex behind her back, she began pushing him to prove his loyalty. Akiro stated she felt humiliated and betrayed, and the only solution would be to get rid of his ex. In May 2019, Carty Shaw visited his former lover, Iman Nasir, in her house in Openshaw, Greater Manchester, England. The young woman had just given birth to their child only 2 months before. After having been intimate with Nasir, Carty Shaw pulled out a knife and stabbed her repeatedly in the face and neck, while also beating her savagely. Meanwhile, Akiro kept control of the situation from afar, texting her boyfriend over 50 times, demanding he filmed the attack. He left Nasir for dead, letting his girlfriend know that he had gone through with their plan, stating, "I did it to prove I love you." Nasir somehow survived the attack and had to be hospitalized for 4 days, while requiring multiple surgeries. She testified against the pair in court, explaining the injuries made it impossible for her to pick up her own baby, and talking about the emotional and physical damage the attack had caused her. On December 20th, 2019, Carty Shaw and Mori Akiro were each convicted to 16 years in prison for attempted murder and intentionally assisting a person to commit murder, respectively. Number 7. Julio Gare. On July 14th, 2020, Julio Gare ambushed and murdered his estranged wife on her way to a doctor's appointment in Camarena Health Center in Madera, California. Callie Jean Gare had recently gotten a restraining order against her husband. It was after 7 long years of abuse, being subjected to attacks with screwdrivers, fire pokers, chainsaw blades, and any other household object at hand, that she finally escaped the marriage along with their 3 kids with only $19 in her pocket. On the day of the murder, Gare approached Callie Jean and their 3 children and started shooting at them before they could find refuge. She died at the scene, trying to keep the boys from harm, using her body as a shield. Dale Bleer, the case's preceding judge, referred to the defendant as a self-absorbed narcissist who appeared laser-focused on destroying everything that was important to Callie. 50-year-old Gare was found guilty of first-degree murder and 3 counts of child abuse on November 17th, 2021. Given the charges, the only possible sentence was life without the possibility of parole. Soon after the trial, California passed Callie's Law, meant to ensure victims of domestic abuse are granted the same protection rights that could have saved the mother of 3's life. Number 6. Jessica Smith. 40-year-old mother of 2 Jessica Smith showed no regrets while addressing the court, accused of murdering her toddler and harming her 13-year-old daughter. On August 17, 2016, Smith and her husband had been involved in a custody dispute back in 2014 when the attack took place. The family court judge had ordered a 1-day visitation regime in favor of the father, but Jessica refused to give the children over to her ex, taking them to a motel in Cannon Beach, Oregon instead. Smith claimed her kids were terrified of their father and that her daughter, Alina, told her she'd rather be dead than live with him. On July 31st, 2014, Smith attacked both her own children, with only Alina surviving the ordeal. When police finally caught up with Smith, they found that she had been living out of her car and was trying to starve herself. It took 2 more years for her to be convicted for her crimes. She opted to enter an Alford plea, in which the defendant maintains their innocence while admitting that there is enough evidence to find them guilty. Smith was sentenced to life in prison with parole eligibility after 40 years served. Number 5. Kyle Overmire. Former Sandusky County Sheriff Kyle Overmire was branded a narcissist by Judge Patricia Cosgrove, who officiated over his 2016 trial. Overmire was accused of taking advantage of his office for his own benefit, using public funds to finance family vacations, meals, and his own re-election campaign. He also had developed an addiction to painkillers, and though he was prescribed over 1,000 pills over a 2-year period, he still tried to find illegal ways to feed his needs. Overmire began to steal discarded drug take-back boxes from 4 different police departments under his command. Of the 43 charges he was indicted with, he pleaded guilty to 13 felony counts. On November 22, 2016, Overmire sobbed as he admitted to his crimes, asking to be allowed to go into rehab in lieu of a stricter sentence. Judge Cosgrove didn't believe his remorse and rejected his plea for mercy. As well as being sentenced to 4 years in prison, Overmire was forced to use his state retirement pension to pay the state a restitution of $24,000. Overmire was released in April 2022, spending the last 180 days of his sentence in a halfway house. Number 4. Ian Stewart. Using what's known in psychology as cognitive distortion, murderer Ian Stewart was able to carry on with his life as usual after assassinating not 1, but 2 romantic partners, allowing him to avoid suspicion for over 6 years. On June 25, 2010, Stewart murdered his wife Diana at their home in Basingbourn, England. The death was considered accidental in part due to her husband's 999 call, in which he claimed to have discovered Diana lying unconscious in their back garden. His wife, he explained, had a history of epilepsy. It was only after he drugged and suffocated his new fiancée, acclaimed author Helen Bailey, in 2016 that police took a closer look at Diana's death. Already serving a life sentence for Bailey's assassination, Stewart allegedly asked investigators, "Haven't you got anything better to do?" Though his first wife's body had been cremated, Stewart at the time had decided to donate Diana's brain to science. It had been adequately preserved for 6 years, making an autopsy of the organ possible. The inspection led medical examiners to change the cause of death to prolonged restriction to her breathing from an outside source. Psychologists connected with the case theorized Stewart had narcissistic tendencies and viewed the women in his life as means to an end. The motive behind both murders was monetary. First, the defendant received £100,000 after his wife's death, and he stood to inherit £4 million from Helen's estate. Number 3. the murder of Grace Millane. British marketing graduate Grace Millane went missing in Auckland on December 1st, 2018, while backpacking in New Zealand. It was the day before her 22nd birthday, and she had planned to celebrate by going on a date with Jesse Kempson, a man she'd met on Tinder. The family grew concerned after not receiving a response to their happy birthday messages. 2 days after her disappearance, they contacted the Auckland police, who launched an investigation. Her body would be recovered 8 days later, stuffed into a suitcase in a fetal position. Investigators zeroed in on Kempson as their main suspect after discovering a post on her Facebook page and realizing that he was probably the last person to have been in contact with Millane. After being confronted with CCTV videos of himself wheeling the suitcase out of a hotel lobby, Kempson confessed to the murder. He told investigators that he had purchased the bag after the crime and had abandoned it in Waitakere Ranges, a mountainous region west of Auckland. The trial lasted only 3 weeks and the prosecution called several witnesses to the stand, all of which portrayed Kempson as a narcissistic, compulsive liar who had alienated himself from family and friends, who was obsessed with dating as many women as possible. He had rused Tinder dates into believing he had cancer, had been adopted and neglected as a child, and even that he was friends with several celebrities. Finally, in February 2020, he was convicted to life imprisonment with the possibility of parole after 17 years. Today's topic was inspired by the one silver shadow. If you have any other topics you'd like to learn about, subscribe and let us know in the comments section below. Number 2. Sher Pini. On November 2nd, 2016, California resident Sher Pini disappeared while out jogging. Local authorities contacted the FBI and a search party was assembled. She reappeared 22 days later, 150 miles south of her home, claiming to have been kidnapped by 2 Hispanic men. The mother of 2 seemed to be hurt and in shock as she gave her statement. Authorities, though, noticed inconsistencies in her story, and an investigation led them to discover Pini had run away to live with her ex-boyfriend. Police also found all of her wounds to have been self-inflicted. For 6 years, the investigation continued, with multiple interrogations being conducted by both the police and FBI. Pini maintained her version of events, even after being warned that lying to the FBI was considered a federal offense. She went as far as to apply for monetary benefits and received over $30,000 from the California Victims Compensation Board. Finally, in March 2022, Pini was arrested, pleading guilty to mail fraud and making a false statement to federal agents. She claimed to be ashamed of her behavior and issued a public apology, but County Sheriff Michael L. Johnson, who was involved in the investigation from the start, denied this was the case. Johnson called Pini out for her behavior, stating the case was about some very strong narcissistic behavior, along with deception, deceit, and selfishness, and that her confession and supplementary apology was the result of a plea deal offered by the state. Number 1. Michelle Carter. Michelle Carter and Conrad Roy met in 2012 in Florida, and though they only saw each other in person a handful of times, they created a strong bond over text messages. Roy had been dealing with self-destructive ideation for years. At first, Carter tried to help him get through it, but after he told her he wanted them to be like Romeo and Juliet, her attitude changed. From June 2014 to his death on July 13th of the same year, the young woman sent Roy hundreds of messages encouraging him to take his own life. On that day, Roy drove to a Kmart parking lot in Fairhaven, Massachusetts, carrying a gas-powered water pump in the back seat. He sat there with his windows up, breathing in carbon monoxide as Carter encouraged him over the phone. At one point, Roy changed his mind and left the truck, but after a call from Carter, he got back inside. It took him 20 minutes to die. 2 days later, Carter told a friend, Samantha Broadman, that he was missing. Broadman would later testify in the trial, stating that Carter's accounts of the facts kept changing. When Carter's messages were discovered, authorities debated themselves on whether charges could be pressed, as there was no direct precedent. On February 4, 2015, she was indicted for involuntary manslaughter. Carter was charged as a youthful offender, meaning she could be tried as an adult instead of a juvenile. Judge Moniz found her guilty on June 16, 2017, finding that Roy had broken the chain of self-causation when he abandoned the car and that Had it not been for Carter's wanton encouragement, he would still be alive. She was sentenced to 2.5 years in prison and 5 years probation. Her first parole request was denied on September the 20th, 2019. But on January the 23rd, 2020, Carter ended up being released 3 months early for good conduct. Criminals in Massachusetts are unable to profit from the publicity surrounding their case during the duration of both their incarceration and probation. Since Carter's probationary period came to an end in August 2022, she can now potentially benefit from the ongoing media attention surrounding her case. Thanks for watching. Would you rather fake your own kidnapping or try stand-up comedy for the first time? Let us know in the comments section below.